Thank you. Arigato.
The Your Own Pay Podcast Network, inspiring, motivating, and educating entrepreneurs around the world. It's Damashe and Michael, just talking tech.
Welcome back to another episode of Damashe and Michael, just talking tech. This is one of your hosts, Michael, at Payown, P-A-Y-O-W-N on Twitter. You can follow me. I'd love to engage with you, probably around 10 a.m. Hey, I'm joined with the amazing Damashe Thomas out of Georgia. Damashe, how can they follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at Damashe, D-A-M-A-S-H-E, and I'll eventually reply. Maybe not the same day, but I always respond. So I love engaging with people on Twitter. Once the conversation gets started, it's pretty interesting. So definitely go follow me on Twitter.
Or as we said in a previous episode, once you get sucked into the Twitter conversation, I'm guilty of that. This week, Damashe, we're talking about an interesting topic, something that people might not realize that they need to use. And we kind of touched on it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about extending your hard drive. That is, we're talking about FTP and transferring files with FTP clients. But before we get into it, what is FTP?
So FTP has been around for a long time. It's File Transfer Protocol, is what those letters stand for. Essentially, what this allows you to do is to connect to a remote computer, usually a server, and have access to its file system and be able to transfer files back and forth. Typically, you're going to use an FTP server nowadays in most cases, or use an FTP client to connect to your web server and upload files or download a file, make some changes to it, and upload it back to your server. It basically gives you a graphical interface to look at that stuff instead of, using terminal to open up files and edit them that way.
FTP is often mentioned when you're administering WordPress sites or websites because they might say upload this via FTP to your WordPress themes directory or to your plugins directory. And it can get confusing because there's so many different ways to access FTP protocol. You can use the terminal and access it via command line, or you can use graphical user interfaces, which for a blind user might be slightly disconcerting. So we're going to talk about two of our favorite graphical user interfaces to interact with FTP accounts on today's episode. And my favorite one is CyberDuck. I've been using it just because it's free to install it, quick and easy to get set up, and lightweight. But Damashe's been using a program, maybe those longtime listeners might remember him saying that Transmit 5 is out and you should go get that now.
Hey, Transmit 5 is out. You should get that right now.
Damashe, why do you use Transmit 5?
This is sort of a storied history with me and Transmit. When I first started paying attention to Mac accessibility, which was probably around 2009, like really getting serious about maybe I want to really look at this Mac. At the time, I was using FTP on Windows, so there was an application over there I used. I didn't specifically start out looking for an FTP client, but once you start paying attention to conversations, you start noticing trends, right? And the trend that I noticed amongst the blind community, probably starting around 2010 or so, was everybody that was, doing anything with their own websites and using FTP to put files there or download files kept coming up with transmit. CyberDuck was definitely in the conversation. I have some reasons why you may want to look at CyberDuck. I'll get to those later, but transmit kept coming up, right? Kept coming up. So when I got a Mac, in 2012, my first MacBook that I actually owned, I went and downloaded Transmit because I was managing websites. And like Mike says, with WordPress, sometimes you get a plugin, you download the plugin, and well, it's a little bit quicker to just pop this app open and upload that plugin to the plugins directory as opposed to logging into the web interface. And I like Transmit. A couple of things about the Transmit app that sort of made it stick for me and made it my de facto FTP client that I recommend to anybody. One, the app is very well done accessibility wise. Has a couple of features that I love. Split pane file navigation, so I can have basically two windows open. Essentially, is kind of the way that I take this. Left side is going to be my local drive. Right side is going to be my remote connection, so I can quickly browse and just tap a keyboard shortcut and upload or download a file depending on what I need to do.
I've never used the split pane if it's even available in CyberDuck, but I started using CyberDuck when I got back into FTP on my Mac because it was, as I said, quick and easy to install and free. It's also really simple to navigate. You do have some keyboard differences if you're switching between Transmit and CyberDuck that can become a bit confusing at times, but you get used to those fairly quickly. And the primary reason why I stuck with CyberDuck is because when Damashe and I were talking about B2 and S3, at the time, Transmit did not support B2. I think it does now, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So Transmit 5 came out at the time that you're hearing this about 2 months ago. And Transmit has added a lot of different connection types. So we're at Transmit 5 now. Transmit 4, which is where I came into Transmit at, supported FTP, SFTP, which is just basically secure file transfer protocol, which you should absolutely be using. Don't ever just use FTP, because then everybody can see the files that you're transferring if they really want to.
And I'm looking.
Yeah, Mike is looking, definitely. All the time. Just ask his wife about that. I think we mentioned that actually on the podcast, so I might leave it.
We did.
They also supported WebDAV, secure WebDAV. I don't have much experience with that, but I do sort of know what it is. And they also supported S3 and Rackspace type connections. With Transmit 5, we got a whole lot more stuff. Oh man, you can connect to Dropbox, you can connect to Google Drive, OneDrive for Business, which are two totally different connection types according to developers that I've spoken with. You have B2. There's some more stuff. I'm not going to remember all of them, but basically just about any cloud service or file cloud storage service that you want to connect to, Transmit 5 now supports that. Makes it super easy to connect, copy links, all sorts of stuff like that. Is really nice. Another reason that I kind of forgot to mention that also has kept me using Transmit for the most part is the iOS app. Why did I need an FTP client on iOS? Well, stories, man, stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just faster to whip out your phone and make the changes you need. I got to ask you, when we're not recording, do you know of a good SSH client for iOS?
Man, so let me tell you, you mentioned it sometimes it's faster, but let me tell you, when you're in the middle of the mall and somebody texts you or call you and say, hey, the website is down. And you're like, oh crap, what happened? And you figure out that they say, well, I was moving files around and I accidentally deleted this file. You're like, oh, you really should have done that. Oh, you really should have done that. So you whip out Transmit.
Been there, done that.
And you navigate it and you're like, man, I got a copy of that file right here in Dropbox. I'm going to move it over to Transmit and then I'm going to upload it back to the server where it needs to go. Hey, refresh the page. All right, fixed it. Cool. Let me go back and eat my waffle fries from Chick-fil-A. And this is a real thing that happened.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about the Transmit app on iOS. So does your data between iOS and macOS, you know what I'm asking, does it synchronize via iCloud?
Yeah, it does now. Well, no, it doesn't synchronize via iCloud. They have what they call Panic Sync. So the company that makes Transmit makes a lot of apps, mainly kind of centered around this area of focus. They have what they call Panic Sync. Panic Sync will sync your favorites, as they're referred to, between Transmit for Mac, if you're using Transmit 5 on the Mac, Transmit iOS, and several of their other apps, including Coda, which is a whole different story. So they don't use iCloud currently. Transmit 4, for anybody still using that or that is familiar with that, will know that Transmit 4 actually did not support Transmit Sync, which was also slightly a pain in the ass for a long time. I would have to sync my Transmit favorites through Dropbox on the Mac, so if I ever reinstalled on a new Mac, I could get those back. But I would have to grab that file on iOS and import it into Transmit on iOS so it would sync through the Panic Sync server. So that's no longer an issue.
Good to hear that. I don't know if CyberDuck offers an iOS app. I've not looked, but now I'm definitely going to look into Transmit.
Let's get back to CyberDuck for a second. I want to interject here that the reason that we're discussing this is because if you've been following along, we've talked about WordPress, we've talked about building websites, we've talked about extending your hard drive storage. So eventually you're going to probably run into a situation where you're going to need a FTP client. Just at this point, most of them, the two that we're talking about, do a whole lot more than FTP. Now, CyberDuck, I have looked at CyberDuck briefly. Unfortunately, me and Mike discussed it, and he told me it was accessible and all that right around the time that Panic was coming out with Transmit 5. So, there's a little bit of conflict there. But I do like CyberDuck. And if you are an occasional user of an FTP client, meaning you don't generally have it open in the background, like I generally have mine open, or just occasionally because you're following along with some directions, you need to FTP something, or if occasionally you want to be able to connect to your B2 bucket or S3 bucket, and it's just an occasional thing. Listen, CyberDuck is an amazing choice. Absolutely. It is an amazing choice. It is free, as Michael has mentioned. Now, I don't know what you call this, because it's free, but the developer asks for donations, which will give you a license key so that you don't get prompted to donate.
Donationware.
Mike says donationware, so we're going to make that the word. I've never heard of this until Mike said it. But I don't know if he created this or not. Now, before you get your arms up and start waving around, I don't want to be interrupted while I'm trying to transfer a file. Will you please donate? That's not how it works. You open up the app, you use it for as long as you need to use it. When you quit the app, you're prompted then and asked, hey, if you can, would you mind donating to this project?
And we'll link to the CyberDuck website on the yourownpay.com/DM27 page, because what I discovered the other day is if you look for CyberDuck in the App Store, it's $20. So download it from their website, try it out. Transmit offers a trial as well, don't they?
Transmit does offer a trial. I don't remember offhand exactly how long it is, but they do offer free trials.
Check them both out, download them, figure out what works best for you, and get transferred those files. You can follow me on Twitter at Payon, Payown, and he's
at Damashe, Damashe.
You've been listening to Your Own Pay Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, visit yourownpay.com/cast for exclusive content and to contact us today. We're eager to hear your thoughts and about how you're making this podcast your own. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. The Your Own Pay Podcast, yourownpay.com.